The morning my uncle filed the lawsuit, I was in a server room in Langley reviewing signals from a source I can't name in a country I can't mention. My phone buzzed 3 times. I ignored it. When I finally looked, it was my cousin, the one who barely spoke to me at my mother's funeral, sending me a photo of legal paperwork with a single message: "You need to get a lawyer." I didn't flinch. I finished my debrief. I caught the first flight back to Millhaven, Tennessee. Some people, when they're scared, cry. Some people run. I've learned over 11 years of doing what I do that the most dangerous thing you can show an enemy is a reaction. So I walked into that county courthouse 6 weeks later, wearing the same gray blazer I'd worn to my mother's burial, sat down at the defendant's table, and I did not give my Uncle Raymond the satisfaction of even glancing in his direction. Let me back up. My mother's name was Helen. She was 58 when she died of pancreatic cancer, and she went faster than any of us expected. 14 weeks from diagnosis to gone. I flew home the moment I heard. I slept on the couch in her house for 12 of those 14 weeks, held her hand, managed her medications, argued with her insurance company at 2 in the morning when they tried to deny her a palliative care referral. My Uncle Raymond, her younger brother, showed up for 3 days near the end, took photographs by her bedside, posted them. My mother had a trust. She and my late father had built it carefully over 40 years. A house in Millhaven worth around $380,000, a savings account, a small portfolio of municipal bonds. The trust had one condition, the kind my mother believed in with her whole heart. The primary beneficiary had to demonstrate consistent employment or caregiving contributions in the 5 years prior to distribution. She believed in earned things. She told me once, "I don't want to give anyone a reason to sit still and wait for me to die." I was the primary beneficiary. Raymond was named contingent beneficiary in the event I was deemed ineligible. You can see where this is going. 6 weeks after the funeral, Raymond filed a civil complaint alleging that I had manipulated my mother during her illness, that I had exercised undue influence over the trust documents, and that I had, and this is the part that made my attorney almost laugh out loud, failed to meet the employment requirement, making me legally ineligible to inherit. His argument was simple and, on the surface, almost convincing. I had no verifiable employment record for the past decade. No W-2s filed under my name, no pay stubs, no LinkedIn profile. I didn't own property. I didn't have a lease agreement anyone could find. To Raymond and to his attorney, a sharp man named Clifford Hale who wore pocket squares and spoke in full paragraphs, I was exactly what they needed me to be, a ghost. She abandoned this family, Raymond told anyone in Millhaven who would listen, ran off to Washington and never came back. Helen supported her for years. She swooped in at the end to make sure she got what she could. My mother's neighbors heard this. Her church friends heard it. By the time we got to the hearing, Raymond had already won the story in town. He just needed to win it in court. What Raymond did not know, what almost no one in Millhaven knew, was that for 11 years I had been a case officer with the Defense Intelligence Agency. I'd been recruited out of graduate school, put through a program I'm not going to describe here, and assigned to a unit that, for obvious reasons, doesn't appear on any government website. My salary was paid through a series of administrative channels that looked, on paper, like contractor payments from a consulting group in Northern Virginia that had a real address and a real phone number and absolutely no information available to the public. I had filed taxes every year under a cover identity, which meant that my real name, the name on my mother's trust, showed nothing. I had known this moment might come someday. I had hoped it wouldn't. I'd spoken to my agency's legal counsel before the hearing, and they were very clear. I could not, under any circumstances, confirm my employment in open court before a civilian jury without prior authorization from the Office of General Counsel and a coordinated briefing with the judge. That process takes time. My attorney, a quiet woman named Barbara Cho, who had handled estate litigation in eastern Tennessee for 22 years and who I trusted completely, filed the necessary motions. We requested a 60-day continuance while the appropriate federal communications were arranged. Clifford Hale opposed the continuance. The presiding judge, the Honorable Francis Alderton, who had been on the bench in Harlan County for 16 years and who I had never met, denied it. So we went to trial without the documentation I needed. Clifford Hale was good. I want to say that because it's true and because it matters. He structured the case methodically. He brought in a forensic accountant who walked the jury through 11 years of publicly available tax records for my name, showing nothing. He submitted affidavits from 2 of Raymond's neighbors, people who had known my mother, testifying to my long absences from Millhaven. He introduced a letter my mother had written to a friend, a letter I had never seen, in which she mentioned worrying about me and wondering what I was doing with my life. That one landed. I heard someone on the jury shift in their seat. Then it was my turn on the stand. Clifford Hale approached me with the kind of smile that defense attorneys must practice in mirrors. "Miss," he said my last name slowly, like he was reading it for the first time. "Can you tell this court where you've been employed for the past 11 years? "I work for the federal government," I said. "In what capacity? I'm not able to provide specifics in this setting." He let the pause stretch out. He was good at pauses. You're not able or you're not willing. Both in this context. "Can you produce a single document, a pay stub, a tax return filed under your name, a letter from an employer, that would verify to this jury that you have held gainful employment at any point in the last decade?" I looked at him. I kept my voice even. "Not in open court? No." He turned to the jury with his hands slightly open, like he was offering them something. "So your position is that you've been employed this entire time, but you cannot prove it and you cannot explain it." "That is correct. And you expect this jury to take that on faith. I expect this court to follow the proper legal process for handling classified employment verification," I said, "which my attorney has initiated." He smiled again. "The process your attorney initiated and the court declined to delay proceedings for." "Yes. How convenient." Barbara objected. The judge sustained. But the damage had a shape, and everyone in that room could feel it. Raymond was watching me from the plaintiff's table. I had not looked at him directly since I walked in. I was not going to give him that. But I could feel him, the satisfaction in him, the certainty that he had already won. He had spent 11 years resenting that my mother loved me the way she did. He had spent 11 years building a version of me in his head that he could live with. The selfish daughter, the absent one, the one who didn't care. He needed that version to be true. Some people need the story more than they need the truth. Clifford Hale called Raymond to the stand in the afternoon. Raymond was comfortable up there. He'd rehearsed. He talked about my mother's loneliness after my father died, about the years she spent in that house in Millhaven, wondering why her daughter never called. He talked about how he had been the one to bring her groceries in the winter when the roads iced over, how he had been the one to sit with her on her birthday when I wasn't there. Some of it was true. Most of it was shaped. "Did your sister ever express concern about her daughter's situation?" Clifford Hale asked. "Many times," Raymond said. "She used to say she didn't know what Vivian was doing out there, that she was worried, that Vivian never talked about work, never talked about her life. Helen used to say it was like having a stranger for a daughter." I kept my face still. "And in her final weeks, did anything change in that regard?" "Not really. Vivian showed up. She was there, I'll give her that. But she was very private. Even then, wouldn't talk about anything. We thought maybe she was struggling, maybe she needed money, and then we find out she's the one getting everything." Barbara cross-examined him. She was precise. She established that Raymond had been estranged from my mother for nearly 3 years before the illness due to a dispute over their own mother's estate, a fact he had omitted. She established that he had not, in fact, been her primary caregiver. She established that the grocery story covered approximately 4 visits over 2 years. Raymond's certainty wobbled slightly under cross-examination, but only slightly. We recessed at 4:30. I sat in the courthouse hallway on a wooden bench and looked at the water stain on the ceiling tile across from me. Barbara sat beside me. "The documentation came through," she said quietly. I looked at her. 30 minutes ago. Federal Courier. There are conditions. The judge has to review it privately first, in chambers. It can be entered into evidence, but portions will be sealed from the public record. I nodded. Vivienne. She paused. I've been doing this for 22 years. I've never handled anything like what's in that envelope. I didn't ask her what she meant. I already knew. The next morning, Barbara approached the bench before testimony resumed and handed Judge Alderton a sealed federal envelope. Heavy stock, embossed with a seal I recognized and most people in that courtroom would not. I watched the judge take it. I watched her expression do something subtle and complicated. She set it down. She picked it up again. She excused herself to chambers for 14 minutes. When she came back, she did not sit down immediately. She stood at the bench and looked at the courtroom for a moment, at the jury, at Clifford Hale, at Raymond, at me. And something in her posture had shifted in a way I recognized from briefings. The way a person's body changes when they understand the full shape of what they're holding. Mr. Hale, she said, I'm going to ask you to withdraw your most recent line of questioning regarding Miss Alderton's employment status. Clifford Hale blinked. Your Honor, that questioning goes to the heart of, I understand what it goes to, Counselor. I've just reviewed documentation that substantially alters the evidentiary landscape of this proceeding. The defendant's employment history is verified, classified at a level I am not able to disclose to this jury, and entirely consistent with the trust's requirements. The room went very quiet. Not the quiet of boredom, the quiet of everyone holding their breath at the same time. Furthermore, Judge Alderton continued, financial records now entered under seal confirm that the defendant has made consistent, significant contributions to the decedent's household expenses over the course of the contested period. Contributions routed through a third-party administrative channel for reasons this court accepts as valid. Raymond said something to Clifford Hale in a whisper I couldn't hear. Clifford Hale put a hand on his arm. The plaintiff's central claims that the defendant was unemployed, that the defendant failed the trust's employment requirement, and that the defendant exercised undue financial influence are not supported by the verified record. They are, in fact, contradicted by it. She looked at Raymond then, not unkindly, but directly. Mr. Vickers, your sister knew exactly what her daughter did for a living. The letter you submitted as evidence, the one in which she expressed worry about her daughter, was written in 2019. The agency liaison has provided this court with correspondence confirming that Miss Alderton's mother was briefed in general terms on the nature of her daughter's work in 2020 and expressed in writing that she was, and I'm quoting from a document now entered under seal, I'm more proud than she had words for. That letter was written 4 months before her diagnosis. I had not known about that letter. I had to look down at my hands for a moment. The plaintiff's case is dismissed. Court costs are to be borne by the plaintiff. The trust distributions will proceed as documented. She brought down her gavel and the sound of it filled the room like something that had been waiting a long time to happen. I didn't look at Raymond when I stood up. I gathered my things slowly, the way I'd learned to do in rooms where showing urgency signals weakness. Barbara squeezed my arm once, quickly, the most emotion she'd shown in 2 days of proceedings. I walked out through the side door of the courtroom into the hallway with the water stain on the ceiling. I stood there for a moment in the quiet of it. Then Raymond came through the door. He looked older than he had at my mother's funeral. Smaller. The certainty had gone out of him the way air goes out of something punctured, not all at once, but steadily until the shape of him was different. Vivienne, he said. I waited. I didn't know, he said. I didn't know any of that. I know you didn't, I said. She never told me. She kept my confidence, that's what she did. He looked at the floor. I genuinely thought you were. I know what you thought, I said. And then, because I had been carrying this for 11 years, and because he was standing right there, and because my mother had written that she was proud of me and I had not known it until 20 minutes ago, I missed every Christmas. I missed her 65th birthday dinner. I sat in a room in a country I cannot name, and stared at a ceiling and thought about her chicken and rice soup, and told myself it was worth it. I sent money home every month through channels you will never be able to trace. I was not a ghost, Raymond. I was just somewhere you couldn't see me. He didn't say anything. I didn't need him to. I picked up my bag and walked to the end of the hallway and pushed through the courthouse door into the thin March sunlight of Millhaven, Tennessee. My mother's house was 12 minutes from here. It was mine now, legally, fully, finally. I was going to go sit in her kitchen. I was going to make her chicken and rice soup from the recipe card she kept in the drawer beside the stove, the one written in her handwriting with a small ink smudge in the bottom corner that had been there since I was 9 years old. I was going to sit at her table and eat it alone, and that was going to be enough.